Tonight on Huckabee.
Has this been the worst year of your presidency?
A failed Obamacare rollout and a broken promise that you can keep your doctor cost the president the public's trust and handed him his lowest approval ratings of his presidency. But does bad news for the president mean good news for Republicans? Former Senator Scott Brown on the political landscape tonight. And last-minute changes are making insurance companies scramble to accommodate the president and his health care law. After a disastrous start for Obamacare in 2013, what surprises still lie ahead? Plus, the Catholic Church wins a big court victory against Obamacare. Will 2014 be the year the birth control mandate is scrapped from the health care law once and for all? Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Mike Huckabee.
Wow. Thank you very much. Welcome to Huckabee from the Fox News studios in New York City. And Happy New Year, everybody. Well, 2013 started with followers of President Obama pretty much feeling like that they were the world. There was a confidence, even an arrogance over having won the 2012 elections, and it translated into a new level of partisanship. The president had skated past even answering questions about Benghazi, and he was pretty cocky, thinking that his pals in the press would never hold him accountable for a dreadful economy, a stagnant job situation, crony capitalism which showered his donors with billions in taxpayer money, and a world falling apart at the seams without any discernible leadership from the White House. Who could have imagined that by the end of the year, his approval ratings would be nearing those of Richard Nixon at the height of Watergate, that his own Democratic Party would see a rush to the exits for members of Congress who'd rather quit than face voters over the train wreck of his one and only major legislative achievement, which has turned out to be the screwing up of the health care insurance for the people who had it, and precious little for those who didn't. Questions would continue about Benghazi, but answers, well, they'd still be elusive. The country would discover that its government was spying on law-abiding citizens, collecting our phone records and emails, and then lying about it until finally forced to admit that, in fact, it was trampling over the Fourth Amendment. All that information came from a kid who was able to break into what was supposed to be a pretty sophisticated security system. We'd also learned that the IRS had become a criminal enterprise, using its almost unlimited power to play hardball politics with Tea Party, pro-life, pro-marriage, and pro-Israel groups. The president vowed he'd get to the bottom of it. He never even got to the top of it. And we'd find out that the Department of Justice had become the Department of Injustice, spying on Fox News reporter James Rosen and his parents, and then tapping the private emails of Associated Press reporters. We so badly botched situations in Egypt and Syria and Iran that Russian President Vladimir Putin had to rescue us from a Mideast meltdown. And our naive deal with Iran, well, it's alienated from our allies all the way from Israel to Saudi Arabia. And it did nothing to make our enemies respect us or even like us. We've spent trillions to eliminate poverty, and we've got more poor people than we've ever had in our history. We've spent $677 million in growing on a website that still doesn't work, when a good one in the private sector would have probably cost less than $10 million. And the Affordable Care Act turned out to be anything but affordable. And the president, well, he's going to need the entire New York City Fire Department to put out the fire on his pants for his utter lies in saying, we can keep our health insurance, we can keep our doctors, and we'll save $2,500 per family. A year ago, being a Democrat seemed like a pretty good place to be politically. Now Democrats are wearing paper bags on their heads, hoping to avoid being seen in public. 2014 could be a great year for the GOP, except for one thing. Republicans have got to figure out that if they spend millions to attack other Republicans who are virtually identical in beliefs, then their self-destruction will allow the self-destructing Democrats to survive yet another election cycle. 2014 ought not to be about Democrats or Republicans surviving. It ought to be about our country and its families surviving. Let me just say, that the party which focuses on Americans, not just Democrats, Republicans, that's likely going to be the party that'll be feeling really good a year from now. That's my thoughts. So can Republicans stop fighting each other and find a way to capitalize on the Obamacare disaster and take back the Senate? Joining me now is former Republican senator from Massachusetts and Fox News contributor Scott Brown. Scott, great to have you here today.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you, Governor.
I worry a lot about the divisions within the Republican Party and some of these outside groups that spend millions of dollars to attack other Republicans. And I'm thinking, why don't we spend that money showing the differences between Republicans and Democrats and liberals and conservatives rather than just showing the differences ever so minute of Republicans?
Well, that's the question of the day. If you remember what President Reagan said, and I'm paraphrasing, rather have somebody as your 70 or 80% friend versus your 100% enemy. And what we're doing is actually we're taking people who have very similar beliefs, and we are dividing each other and fighting over the scraps when we could actually be uniting. Because I have always felt, as a Republican since I was 18 years old, and you may or may not know this about me, my mom and dad were married and divorced 4 times each. Lived in 17 houses by the time I was 18. My mom was on welfare, had a lot of challenges like many other people. But when I chose to vote for President Reagan at 18 years old, I did it because it was the party of opportunity, and we had choices, and we could learn and grow and succeed in this world. And what we're finding now is that it's not good to be a Republican. There's some sort of litmus test, apparently, that we all have to follow. And there's got to be room for you, for people like me, for Rand Paul, Ted Cruz. And we then need to take those ideas and bring them forth to the American people and say, hey, we're the party of prosperity, of opportunity, and we need to move forward together.
You know, when you won the Senate seat in Massachusetts, it was a shock to the political system of America because, well, people used to call it Ted Kennedy's seat. I think you famously said, no, that's the seat that belongs to the people of Massachusetts.
No, it's the people's seat. That's right.
But you won that seat, driving that red pickup truck all over Massachusetts and winning the hearts. Then you found you got to the Senate, you took some significant votes. Not everybody in the Republican Party liked what you did. What did you experience that was the biggest shock to you when you got there?
Well, I was battling, listen, being a Republican from Massachusetts, winning, I think it was 10-1 or 9-1 in the elections since I ran for political office. And going to Washington, I told Mitch McConnell, listen, he said, oh, you're great, you're going to be the 41st vote. I said, sir, with all due respect, I may be the 60th vote sometimes because we need to put our country's interests first, not the Republican Party, not the Democratic Party, but the American people in our country's interests first. And I said the same thing to Harry Reid, too. And so they had to fight for my vote. I was the 41st or the 60th vote, and there were times when my own party, and you know who the players are, were very critical, so I was battling on the left and the right. And once again, I said to myself, I'm going to go down there and do what I feel is right for the country first. And that's what I think more people need to do.
You voted against Obamacare when you got to the Senate.
No, they actually rammed it through before I got there, and I would have stopped it as the 41st vote. And then when I got there, they voted. Every Democratic senator and congressman voted against every grandfathering amendment that would have protected and done the things that we're trying to do right now. So shame on them, and the voters of this great country have an opportunity right now to send a message in 2014.
There has been a lot of speculations. You and your family, you've long had ties to New Hampshire. You've had a place here a long time. That's your permanent home now, is New Hampshire. A little Senate race is coming up in 2014 with incumbent Jeanne Shaheen. A lot of speculation Scott Brown's going to be in it. Are we going to see you on the campaign trail in New Hampshire?
Well, tell you what, when you answer the question about you in 16, okay?
Well, but that's different. I got 2 extra years, see, Scott. You got to answer now.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, is it Huckabee and Brown, Brown Huckabee? So, well,
but you are looking at it.
Listen, I'd be misleading people if I said that I wasn't honored for the consideration. But right now, it's strictly personal that we're living there. I'm looking at getting my family settled, obviously taking care of my mom and reconnecting with my family who all lives up there. Listen, this present Senator Shaheen, she was the deciding vote on Obamacare. She rammed it through, and she voted for it, obviously, and she voted against every grandfathering amendment. And don't forget, she was also one of the people that wrote that letter to the IRS asking that they investigate the conservative groups. So she's going to have to answer to somebody. She's going to have to answer the American and the people from New Hampshire on these very important issues.
Well, if you're the one, just come back to our show and tell us about it. We'll be happy to give you the forum here. Scott, great to see you.
Good to see you too,
thank
Governor.
You so much
Thank
for
you.
being here. By the way, Senator Brown and his daughter, Ayla, are going to stay with us. Later in the show, you're going to hear his daughter sing. She was with us before, with us again. You love Ayla. We do, and we let Senator Brown hang around as well. But first, a new year, new rules. We've now got some surprises from Obamacare. I'll be asking former HHS Secretary Mike Leavitt what consumers ought to be looking out for next year, and that's coming up next.